So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's quickly go ahead to our next conversation. Allow me an opportunity to now call upon first off the moderator of this conversation. Before we do so, can we please request some decorum in the audience? Can we request our speakers to please network outside? Can we please request our speakers to network outside? Ladies and gentlemen, can we please request our speakers to network outside? Thank you. With that, it's my humble opportunity to now call upon the moderator of this conversation. He's a finance and strategy expert with demonstrated history of working in the corporate sector. Has a personal interest in global and Indian economic and has shared his ideas on the economic development and economic crisis with the government stakeholders from across the world. And some of his recommendations on the crisis resolution and economic development were implemented by the government authorities. Let's call upon none other than the Corporate and Economic Advisor, ex-TCS, ICICI Bank, Hinduja Group, R. Kannan. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for none other than Mr. R. Kannan. Joining him are his eminent panelists, starting with Mr. Hemant Gupta, MD and CEO, Desi Investments, wholly owned a subsidiary of Equip Social Impact Technology Limited, an alumnus of IIT Madras and IIT Kolkata. IIM Kolkata, I believe. Apologies on that. Previous stints including working at various leadership positions at Citibank. He's also founded the National CSR Exchange, also the setting up of the Social Stock Exchange, which is one of the pivotal topics right now we're covering. He was one of the core members in setting up the Social Stock Exchange at BSE. So I think he's the perfect leader to cover this topic. So let's give him a warm round of applause for none other than Mr. Hemant Gupta. We also have Dr. Harish K. Ahuja, Head NSE, Head Sustainability Carbon and Power Markets, an energy market specialist and an MBA in energy management with 25 years of experience in the field of energy, finance, and climate. His expertise lies in power finance, competitive electricity markets, and creating transaction-based tech platform. Let's give him a warm round of applause. And ladies and gentlemen, now we have our leader who brings 20 plus years of work experience across communications and development sectors. She's somebody who co-founded a non-profit organization called Sahyog Foundation, which enabled capability building and facilitated internal readiness for organizations and program effectiveness for NPOs. Let's call upon the Head Social Stock Exchange BSE, Sheena Gandhi. So well, with that, a very warm welcome to all of you, and I'd like to leave it in the able hands of Mr. R. Kannan to take it forward.
Yeah. Good evening to all of you. I'm very happy that we have a very illustrious panel. Mr. Gupta, after being in banking and in global banking, last 12 years he is involved in social related activities, including setting up the first social stock exchange in India, Bombay Stock Exchange. Then Dr. Harish Ahuja, he has a blend of both government experience as well as a corporate. So he has the best perspectives, and as she explained that on regulation as well as now implementation of these concepts. So he is head of the sustainability, carbon and power markets. This is one area which we are going to see a big push in India. We are talking about carbon trading and all. Then, of course, Ms. Sheena Gandhi. She was always a social entrepreneur. So she is fitting into this role, what she is doing today, perfectly well. So we have the three experts here to share with us the details. I know many of us are trading in stock exchanges, but this concept as a social stock exchange is a new one, as you are all aware. It was developed and introduced only 2-3 years ago. The concept is it's a dedicated platform within the stock exchange where social enterprises and non-profit organizations can raise funds from public. The objective of this platform actually, I was just discussing with them before this session. They are telling me that as of today, some 10, they will share the experience. 10 or 11 issues have already happened. So the objective is to facilitate impact investing by connecting socially minded investors with organizations working towards social and environmental good. So unlike we investors in stock exchanges expect returns, the investors in these instruments, they are not expected to expect any returns. So I was told that they have already onboarded some of the large corporates with a good cash surplus to come on these platforms and invest in such projects. So that is the background. So with that in view, the first question to Mr. Gupta, we are talking about Viksit Bharat. In fact, when they are talking about restructuring the multilateral development banks and they are talking about climate finance as a challenge, I shared a lot of ideas with the World Bank, IMF, as well as our finance ministry on how the funds can be raised for such projects. Of course, I got encouraging letters from President of World Bank and Asian Development Bank and all on my suggestions. So these platforms can be used for even raising such. So from that point of view, from Viksit Bharat, from that point of view, what is the vision for the SSC in contributing to a more inclusive and sustainable India? Mr. Gupta, your views.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mr. Kannan. First, I'd like to start by asking the audience a question. Do you know if other countries have a social stock exchange apart from India? How many of you think that other countries also have a social stock exchange? Oh, okay. So the answer is that before the social stock exchange got launched in India, there were 13 other countries where the social stock exchange was implemented in various forms. Okay, and in none of those countries was this experiment a rip-roaring success. Right. So when we were setting up the social stock exchange way back in 2019, when the finance minister announced it in her budget speech, we actually had a lot of lessons that we had to learn from the successes and failures of these 13 countries. Right? And when we architected the social stock exchange, we implemented all those lessons, which is why in a very short time, the social stock exchange in India has already seen a lot of traction that Dr. Ahuja and Ms. Gandhi will talk about. The vision that when the social stock exchange was getting created and as it has been implemented was always that the three key things that a stock exchange brings to a financial system is transparency, inclusivity, and liquidity, right? And the idea was to bring these three attributes to the social development financing sector. So therefore, the idea of a social stock exchange was mooted. Some of the things that have enabled that vision of the Viksit Bharat to happen is one, it is not a separate platform like Mr. Kannan said, it's actually a segment in the stock exchange. The stock exchange, as all of you must be aware, is actually divided into various boards. You have the main board, the SME segment, now the new startup segment, right? So the social stock exchange is actually a segment in the stock exchange. The second thing is that in order to enable the social development sector in India is primarily driven by not-for-profit organizations. Right? Not-for-profit organizations, by virtue of the work they do not generate a financial return. The reason for existence of a stock exchange is to generate a financial return. So therefore, how do you get a not-for-profit organization, which is the backbone of social development, onto this platform? Right? So what was architected was the concept of a donation on the stock exchange. It was given this name, a zero coupon, zero principal instrument, which basically means zero coupon meaning you don't earn any interest on your money, and zero principal meaning you don't get your money back, right? So nothing but a donation or a grant. And the 10 fundraisers that have happened so far on the social stock exchange have been via these zero coupon, zero principal instruments. However, in my mind, since you talked about the vision also, in my mind, the future is not just about donations and grants being on a stock exchange. Uh, Principally because, remember, transparency, liquidity, and inclusivity. A donation or a grant, transparency is fine, right? You get more transparency, it's on a stock exchange. Inclusivity is also fine because the NGO actually has access to, potentially has access to crores of people who are investors on the stock exchange. But liquidity for a donation or grant is something that is very hard to implement. Right? So therefore, to my mind, the future of the social stock exchange would actually lie in areas like blended finance, areas like social enterprises which combine a for-profit and a not-for-profit motive in terms of their operation. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Ahuja, you are saying that you are already talking to some of the large corporates with big cash surpluses. So how you are planning to make this system which is becoming robust to support social initiatives?
So first of all, on behalf of National Stock Exchange, I'd like to congratulate the organizers who thought about this topic and keep this topic as 8th plenary session, if I'm not wrong. But I think it's a very important topic and very pertinent topic, and I think Hemant has set a good context also. So your specific question is how we are trying to take care of the supply side of the exchange. One is demand side, the supply side, I think. Hemant spoke about the 111 NGOs already registered, 10 projects already got listed, raised around 22 crores. So I'm happy to share that 11 more issues aggregating around 45 crores are already filed with us. Out of those 11, 2 issues has been approved. One issue will open on 10th and the other issue will open on 15th of Feb, aggregating around 1.7 crore cumulative. And 9 issues will be coming in next 2-3 months before 31st March. But the question is the balancing the equation on the supply side, which is who will be the donors. So let me give a perspective here. So far, the donors had been big daddies of the world like NABARD, which are the key part of the entire ecosystem, SIDBI, and for that matter, Jirodha has given funds also. Jirodha has contributed around 5 crores. Then A.T. Chandra Foundation, which is a big Amit Chandra Foundation, Kanodia Group, and I think IOCL, ONGC, a little bit of ultra HNIs people are also coming. But when NSC took this equation, we thought that if we like to bring the bigger issues, and I'm very happy to share the largest issue was come by Swadesh. They raised around 10 crores. The 10th issue was for 10 crore. What we raised in 9 issues, around 9 crore or 9.5 crore, was raised in first issue by Swadesh, 10 crores. And now I'm very happy to share the 13th issue is for 10.5 crores or 15 crore, I think. So a number of sizes increased, but we need donors. So we are trying to create a D25 club. In this D25 club, we are approaching one by one all the top-notch guys like Infosys, Ajim P. Premji Foundation, Bill Gates Foundation, their Indian arm, not the American arm, and a similar other IOC, ONGC, you know. So this way, I think they have clear communication from their side that we know about social stock exchange. We know that out of 17 SDG goals, you already captured 12 goals by these 10 projects. And we know that you are present. So this is the data I'm sharing with you out of all these states, except 3 states, which are, I'll say not 3 states, northeast states, Jammu, Kashmir and Chhattisgarh, rest everywhere, 1 or 2 NGOs have registered social stock exchange. So our penetration is pan-India. Our investors also coming primarily from Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Delhi. So I think it's a reasonably I'll say accepted concept now. Last but not the least, very focused attempt we are being made that when you come to social stock exchange, the donor, what Hemant said, you get 3 things. And from the donor perspective, one is trust. Trust means, you be rest assured that whatever money you are being given, they are achieving certain outcomes. And those outcomes are not being verified by NSC or BSC or for that matter, the NGO, a third-party social auditor. The second assurance we are giving them is transparency. The entire process in terms of from their offer documents to their selection to raising the money and utilization of money is very transparent, like we do in equity, and there will be complete disclosure. And third is technology. The disclosures, the compliance regime is very transparent, and you can see like any other stock, you can see the development on a quarter-to-quarter basis. But very important thing is, when you contribute, retailer can also come. A retail person like you and me can also go and contribute through SBA mechanism or through this UPI mechanism now, 10,000 rupees. So I think trust, technology, and transparency, these three key element of every such donation we try to sell upon, pitch upon, and they like it, and I think next year we would see many more such donors to join us. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a very, very encouraging to note that now it is picking up fast, even though the concept was there for some time. It's encouraging what was raised in 9 issues. They were able to do it in the 10th issue. And 11th one is also a large one, and they have spoken to large investors. But still, I would say the concept is in a nascent stage. And there are challenges facing the growth and development of these SSCs in India. So I would like to have the views of Ms. Sheena on what are the challenges and what should be done about.
Thank you, sir, and thank you everyone for attending the session. I think I come from a not-for-profit sector perspective, so I'm going to try and, I think between Hemant sir and Dr. Harish, they've brought in the perspective of liquidity as well as what the vision really is. And I think really looking at where it is from a not-for-profit standpoint. How many of you actually know not-for-profits who are dying to who understand the financial nuances that get into on going into a stock market? A lot of them don't. And for them, the learning journey is huge and the slope is very tedious for them. One, because they don't have the understanding of what it really takes to list or register on the stock exchange. And second, I think it's a balancing act. It's a hand-holding act that we need to be able to perform both as both stock exchanges. And it's great to know that we actually have about 120 together on the stock exchange. So one of the biggest challenges that we've seen is, I think, when the vision of the finance minister was to give equal opportunity to a lot of the not-for-profits, irrespective of your budget size. But what happens is, because if you need transparency and you need compliances and you need to be, you need to align to the regulatory and the filing, you need to, as an organization, have the operational capacity to be able to do that. And that means what? You have to have an auditor, you have to have a company secretary, you have to have a merchant banker or of sorts. And most of them do not have the operational capacity or the operational budget to be able to take on that journey. Today, if you go to a merchant banker, say, do a red herring, they will charge you an arm and leg, right? And I think a lot of the audience here will understand that. But can a not-for-profit that has a budget of 10 crore give 10 lakhs to a merchant banker to do it? No. So, I mean, that is one of the bigger challenges. Second is, while you're doing the listing process, I, as an organization, don't have that flexibility in terms of the budget to do a full-page ad in the Times of India to say my listing is coming. So how do I really encourage and market it to individuals or investors, yeah, on my own, right? I think that's the second piece, which is, how do you really market yourself as an organization to an audience that does not or may not know the kind of work and the deep work that you're doing? So that's one of the second challenges that is there. The third one, which is there, a lot of them will complain and say there's too many disclosures, there's too many reportings. But I think it's just because the cycle is new, yes, and we need to ensure that all our paperwork, all the compliances is in place. So I think these are some of those top 3 challenges that we've sort of seen. Of course, to counter some of the challenges, I think we've been, as a social stock exchange advisory committees, we have multiple committees. How is it that we can really support the not-for-profit ecosystem? One, there is a lot of hand-holding from both the exchanges. I think I can speak for Dr. Harish as well. I think both our teams really handhold them, talk to them, what can you do, what can you not do, how do we automate systems that are more layman. I think the second piece that the advisory committee has come out with also initially, and I think Hemant sir was part of it, was the capacity building fund, which really helps them with the cost factor. Because and I think it's a fund that stays with NABARD, that they're able to help. So I think at least, unless you both have some additional challenges, at least those I think are some of the top 3 challenges that I foresee.
Yeah. Also, Dr. Harish, you talked about speaking to very large investors, and you are trying to get the commitment and all that. But the concept of stock exchange is that it has to be a platform which should reach more people. And also the objective is to mobilize funds from retail investors. So that is the objective of this concept of stock exchange. So how, she talked about the challenges, Sheena, how we will be able to kind of make individual retail investors to come to the platform, and what type of investors we should target, and what should be the strategies to be adopted by the organizations which want to raise funds to attract the retail investors.
I think it's a very important question. So the way I like to answer this question by saying, giving to line in fact, that if you like to go fast, go alone. But if you like to go far, go together. I think if India has to become Viksit Bharat, apart from government, big institution, retailers also participate. And when I see social stock exchange, I don't see it's a separate segment or a one thing which is in isolation. I see it's a part of Trinity. You know, I always say everywhere. So India's net zero energy transition goal plan, this first point of the Trinity. Second point is ESG disclosure, VRSR, and third is social sector development. It's all connected, you know. So setting the context here, if we need to get the participation of retailers, in fact, they need to be told. And people don't buy the products. People don't buy the stocks. People buy the stories. I think just before us, Dr. Partha Sarthi said a very important point, that people buy the fables. All the big brands of the corporate know how to sell the fables or the stories. What if I tell a retail investor that you can give 10,000 rupees by click of a button, not for buying a solar pump or not buying for solar light, you know. This solar light can be burned in a village where the guy who's reading with this, he can pass his 12th class or he become an engineer, you know. He will add a lot of value to his family. What if I tell this retailer that, you know, you would not buy a kind of a 10th class certificate for a child girl, because it has been studied that if any boy or girl qualifies 10th class, the chances of their coming out of poverty is at least more than 85% probability is there. So I think we will tell a lot of stories around this, you know, because people buy stories so far. Unfortunately, fortunately, in social stock exchange, we are not told the stories. Because in SME, we have done this. In main board, we have done this. I think we'll replicate the same storytelling here in social stock exchange also. The first and foremost is, can we use the technology to onboard them quickly, expeditiously, and we are doing that. We are integrating UPI with the entire platform. We already operated, 4 banks are already doing SBA, you know, like you can give the money. And I'm very happy to share that last 2 issues of Vivekananda, girls' education, and the Swadesh, roughly around, I will say, 240 retailers, they participated. They paid around, 10,000 to 15,000 rupees. So 240 retail individuals have already participated. So this is one very important development. And now the issues which are lined up, and we have structurally and very strategically placed the issues. There are certain issues which are coming by very well-known social institutions which are setting up large hospitals. They have demonstrated their success. by setting up a large hospitals. In fact, they are coming with a project which need around 400 crores. They already raised 385 crores. For 15 crores, they are coming, and they will be mainly targeting retail. So I think the right issues, the right storytelling, right technologies, and most important thing is how we reach them. I told you that out of all these states except Chhattisgarh, Jammu, Kashmir, Northeast state, we are everywhere. I think we need to tell more stories digitally because they consume more stories digitally. They'll participate in a structured manner. So that's the idea. The last but not the least, ATG benefit is there for all these participants. And one very more important thing which we're talking to them is, which I always tell the people that I just like to ask you one question. I think I have used in my childhood Lifebuoy, soap, but today I use Kama, or Forest Essential because I have grown in my, earning capabilities. Same thing happened in a country, when you grow, as your GDP grows, your consciousness towards environment, your consciousness toward fellow human being grows. If India will grow, I think people will be more open to go do the charity, and I think we should capture that rising income curve, and we should also bring them on board. So that's the idea.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's very good to hear the strategy for attracting investors, telling the right stories. Of course, most of you also personally, you are contributing to a lot of charitable organizations. So ATG is one benefit, but I was just asking whether under CSR also corporates when they invest, will they benefit? I think they are trying for that also. If that happens, most of the corporates also will be looking at coming forward and investing more. And coming to this technology played a major role in Indian stock markets so far. And even in this concept, how the technology can play a role in terms of transparency, efficiency and accessibility of the SSC. And Ms. Sheena also talked about some challenges in terms of cost. So your views, Mr. Gupta.
Thank you very much. So if you use that same structure of supply and demand, right, and you approach from both the angles, Sheena spoke about the demand side, where for a not-for-profit organization or for a small growing social enterprise, both financially as well as from a compliance viewpoint, it's often not very easy to stay compliant. And it's not, remember, it's not a one-time compliance that they have to, it's an ongoing compliance. Right? Second, again from a demand point of view, building awareness about their issue, letting more and more people know about their track record, about the impact they've created in the past, and why it's important for people to invest in their issue. These two are the key challenges from a demand point of view, and both these challenges, if you think hard enough, can very easily be solved by technology. Right? So as an example, if you think about, and one of the reasons why from a demand standpoint the compliance piece is still a challenge is that standardization in the social development sector has been low. So if you look at, as an example, the accounting function, right? The accounting function by and large has been standardized. There are accounting standards, there are reporting standards. However, similar standards don't exist on the social development sector. So it's important that from a demand point of view, from an NGO or a social enterprise point of view, one, we standardize on the various forms, the reporting that needs to happen for them to avail of the social stock exchange. And implement technical solutions so that they're easy to do. Second, there are platforms that publicize the social stock exchange as well as the issues that are coming up, that are able to showcase track records of organizations. And the capacity building fund that Sheena talked about earlier, one of the primary purposes of that is to actually perform these functions. On the supply side, right, to be honest, technology by and large has already automated most of the investment process. Right? What is missing, I think, is that, and I've spoken about this in the past, is social giving, to my mind, should be structurally publicized as the fourth asset class. right? We talk about cash, we talk about debt, we talk about equity as typical investment things, assets that we should invest in. As Dr. Ahuja was talking about the growing GDP and the growing appetite for social giving, perhaps it's high time that we classified social giving as a fourth asset class and made make investment advisors educate people on why social giving is important. In the earlier discussion, somebody spoke about the fact that historically India as a society has been very strong in community service, in giving to the society, right? Maybe it's high time we went back to our roots and demonstrated to people why it's important, why the social stock exchange is important in transparently and inclusively building the social development ecosystem.
Yeah. So Ms. Sheena, how SSC can effectively measure and report on social impact in a credible and comparable manner, yeah? Now we are doing that for companies.
Yes.
It is very easy. And whereas Mr. Gupta said it is all not standardized today. So that is one of the challenges. How do you do that?
So historically, like I said, there's a trust deficit that you're going in with. How do you get investors to invest knowing where their money is going? And you build in into the journey of a not-for-profit or a social enterprise. What is that journey from the time they register, they list? What does that entire cycle end with? It ends with impact. And who decides on that impact? Who measures that impact? And I think Dr. Ahuja covered it slightly, but NISM has started a 11-module course, certification course, to come out with social impact assessors. So there's an entire social ecosystem that is being built with the CA networks, okay, to be able to support who's going to be. So it doesn't, anybody, there's a qualification, anybody can do it. You can be an independent social impact assessor, but to be able to do that impact assessment, you have to be employed by a social auditor that has minimum 3 years of experience in doing social impact work. And I think one of the key reasons why the focus is so much on measurability is to, at the end of the day, go back to the individual, irrespective of how much money they've given, whether it's 10,000 rupees or 50 lakh rupees, is to say, if you are on the social stock exchange, we will give you accountability, we will give you transparency, you will know exactly where your money is going, and everything will be on the website. All your disclosures, all your fund utilization certificates, everything is supposed to be on the website for you as investors, as donors, as funders. I've used them very interchangeably, for you to be able to review. Of course, it has been 2 years since I think the first listing that happened. The first organization that listed has just completed, after 18 months, if I'm not mistaken, their social impact, their annual impact report. So I think for us, that's a milestone. And I think we have a lot of learning in that, and we will continue to keep developing that. The second piece, I think I just want to build on what Hemant sir said about uniformity. Unlike the corporate sector, in the social sector, every donor has a different measurement impact report that they would like. The idea, and I see that as a long-term vision for SSE, is to be able to see how is it that we can uniform that for across the board. Of course, it's a big ask, but I think it's a good start. And if we can uniform it, the burden on the not-for-profit or for-profit enterprises with social intent, it will lessen and will not become so burdensome. Of course, there is added cost to having a social impact assessor, but I think that's just part and parcel of ensuring that trust is a key criteria when you are dealing with the development sector organizations. So I'll pause here.
So, Dr. Ahuja, when Ms. Sheena mentioned, she said that the complaints and all the requirements are very high. We understand that for corporates, yes, they can bear this cost. How does the complaint system compare to other listing today? And is there a scope for making it a lighter, in a lighter way, so that you will be able to attract, we will be able to attract more people who want to come and raise funds from the platform?
Yeah, so I think let's compare with main board, SME, and SSE. So because I see all the three listings. So in main board, typically we ask for the disclosure every quarter. In SME, slightly light regulation, we ask for 6 monthly. In SSE, we just ask for one. Once in a year, you have to submit your annual impact assessment. And if you are doing a project, then your annual project report, So I think compliance are already light, but having said so, if I'm not wrong, when I started, when Baton was passed by Hemant Gupta to us, I think there are around 300 plus field in their annual impact assessment report. Now they're brought down to roughly 160, 170. So I think every year SEBI is learning from our steep learning curve is allowing us to lighten the regulations. It will keep happening. So I think compliance as such, and please understand, we should not see the entire thing from the equation of inside of the demand equation. Supplier expects some compliance. Supplier expect that at least the key field should be filled. The outcome should be measurable, what Sheena said, and it should be describable in a very easy and structured manner. It should not there's some vague criteria has been defined and those are not being measured and managed well. So I think we should be able to balance both the sides. So compliance are required also, but lighter regulation. Yeah.
So what we have seen in the financial system, initially the LIC, insurance and all, it was all mainly being sold by distributors, which gave a big fillip. Similarly, what we have seen later, mutual funds. Yeah. So when the concept of distributors came, actually it helped to expand. Yeah, the mutual fund portfolios, mutual fund AUM, something similar. If you want this concept to be taken off, we have to talk about the ecosystem around this, the donors, the investors, the users, so all these people. So the ecosystem, how can we develop a robust ecosystem? I would like to have all three of your views, starting with Mr. Gupta.
Two things. One is that as a part of the architecture, there's actually something called the capacity building fund. The capacity building fund, when we were architecting this segment, the same question arose, that anything new that you launch has to be given the right impetus, the right motivation for it to succeed, for the ball to start rolling. And what the capacity building fund was set up with two objectives. One is to what Sheena talked about earlier, which is to make this entire listing process easier and less costly for the not-for-profits. And the second was for the education and awareness of the investors and donors about the social stock exchange and why they should come onto the social stock exchange. I think my impression is that the capacity building fund has been slightly slow on the uptake, and therefore it's taking longer than it should have for both of these functions to get performed effectively. But once that starts happening, definitely, there'll be more awareness and more participation. The second is the point you made about distributors is very important, which is why, in fact, if you remember, I spoke earlier about the fourth asset class being social giving, which is actually effective if brokers and investment advisors start pushing that, right? So also, I'd like to actually make a comment. The social stock exchange is not just about not-for-profits. A lot of people have this concept that the social stock exchange was set up for not-for-profits. It's actually meant for social enterprises, which includes for-profit enterprises that have social impact in their DNA. Right? And I think the third point I'd like to make is that I think we should also start talking about for-profit social enterprise to come onto the social stock exchange more aggressively. Because if you think about it, retail investors would be interested in something that has a financial return and a social return story, right? And I think that part is something that also needs to get focused on. Dr. Ahuja.
Just before Dr. Ahuja speaks, if you look at Bangladesh, yeah, the present chief advisor, he went and developed 50 social enterprises, all for profit, with a joint venture with the leading firms in the world, for milk, for Adidas, like that. So, like Mr. Gupta was saying, we can also attract some of these social enterprises with profit motive, like Dr. Ahuja was saying, hospital. So hospital, I don't know whether it is a hospital, but of course most of the hospitals in India are under charity. Considering that also, now Dr. Ahuja, your views on developing the ecosystem.
Yeah, so I think I will start where Hemant left. I'm completely echoing his thought that CPF has not done the justice to his role. It's a 100 crore corpus, I think 20 crores already been funded. But so far it has been confined to only two major aspects. One is creating awareness, and second, which we did, I think, under a lot of force, was that every NGO which is getting listed, so if they get listed, they raise the money, they get 5 lakh rupees, irrespective of their cost incurred on filing the documents or arranging the chartered accountant. We are giving the 5 lakhs. So first 20 organizations are getting 5 lakh rupees, and I think it will be expanded. I think we'll cover now 50 organizations. So that is being done. Third thing, which in fact we are very clear now, and I think this was discussed today itself, that I like to add here. So there is a thing called impact bond, and I think Hemant wanted to indicate that only in impact bond, if a social enterprise are not only creating social impact, but at the same time making some money, then they can share some return, you know. So impact bond is that kind of instrument. We are trying to popularize that instrument. And a very important suggestion came from Additional Chief Secretary of Government of Madhya Pradesh. There are multiple state governments which are keen to adopt impact bond, because if you see the spending done by the state government and central government schemes, around 5 lakh crore is spent on social schemes. Even if they give 5%, 25,000 crores on table. So I think, and they're keen, but they don't know how to look towards this entire impact bond story, So we help them. We handheld the government of Madhya Pradesh, government of Assam we are also in touch with, government of Uttarakhand we are also in touch base with. They have told us that why don't CPF, Capacity Building Fund, create a pool of experts, those experts who have got experience of setting up such impact bond framework, and we'll pick them from there and then we'll implement it. So I think the intent is that the Capacity Building Fund can create a pool of experts and then they'll build the ecosystem, but not the least, I think one very important policy intervention is on the side of CSR. You touch upon it, see the number, top 500 NSE listed companies make around 13 lakh crore profit. 2% of them, that is around 26,000 crore. We are not saying give us 26,000 crore span. We're saying make a glided path approach, give us 5% first year, make it compulsory that all the CSR spent would be done through, if not all, 5% of that through social stock exchange. Will be a lot of capacity. When the money flows, when the liquidity comes, the many time equation, balances itself. Last but not the least, I think there is, like Sheena said, like Hemant said, every agency is doing this. We need to create a standard framework, be it in terms of offer document, be it in terms of their outcome criteria, be it in terms of their reporting. Those documents can be prepared by CBA by engaging some good lawyers. There in education or climate change or health, I think some standard framework, some standard template can be created by hiring good, consultant or good lawyer. I think that job can also be done by the CVF, and this will encourage the ecosystem.
Yeah. Last word from Ms. Sheena.
Yeah, I'll make it short since she's standing there. I think just in addition to both of them, I think there's a narrative building piece that really needs a lot more focus on. I think we have done our bit with the development sector organizations. I think there's a lot more from an investor education piece. I think we've started, let me put it that way, we've started the process, but I think we still have a long way to go for it to really be, for the demand and supply to really sort of complement each other. I feel besides that, I think the role the government can play in narrative building would also be very, very, so it doesn't just become a stock exchange or or a development sector or a broker, financial institute, but also collaboratively sort of doing that. I think I think collaboration by itself is something that we've done very well at the stock exchange so far. And I think we should continue to do it, to build that narrative and build on all the learnings that we have gained over the last 2 years from all the listings, from all the failures, and talk about them. Because I think if we don't talk about those, the learning curve will be lesser and lesser. So just adding just the two bits. Thank you so much.
Mr. Gupta, yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a quick question for the audience. How many of you had heard of the social stock exchange before this session?
Yeah.
And how many of you are familiar with the concept of a social stock exchange?
Today, after this.
No, no, no. we know. How many of you are familiar enough to actually utilize it? Okay, if this is a very good beginning, but I think we need to increase the number. Part of this, the last question actually, part of the onus is on you guys. Familiarize yourself with the social stock exchange. Figure out how it works. I'll be more than happy to answer questions later on or whenever on this regard, and I'm sure Dr. Ahuja and
So
Sheila.
thank you all three, and I'm very, very happy that even before coming to this session, I was not so clear about this concept. But after this panel discussion, I hope all of you are very, very clear on this concept and what are the opportunities and challenges. And after hearing them, I'm very, very hopeful that this is going to take off, and all the best. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, on that note, may we request all of our leadership to please come together for a group photograph first. Allow me an opportunity of having them together on the frame. Then, of course, we're going to be having the felicitation. Could the team also relay to Dr. Narendra to please come inside for the felicitation? Can we request Dr. Narendra? Team at N-Cube Collaboration. Dr. Narendra, can we request your company on stage for the felicitation? Thank you. Right in nick of time, he knows when to exactly come in back and I think make his star entry.
You made us 2 days. He didn't sleep for 3 days.
3 days, so maybe that's the sleepwalk talking, yeah? All right, but if that's the sleepwalk, we don't know what the actual walk is going to be like, so congratulations. So of course in the frame, we had Dr. Narendra and Sheena, and of course now we're heading towards our next speaker, Dr. Harish. Dr. Harish, thank you so much for joining us. Now we'll take the moment to felicitate Mr. Hemant Gupta, and we have in frame Mr. Sambasavan Ji. And of course, now let's get Mr. R. Kannan being felicitated for his excellent moderation. Let's give them a bigger round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic round of felicitations. May we request all our dignitaries to come together. Mr. Sambasavan Ji, also please join them in one frame and give us the maximum smile and the enigmatic look, which we can see, of course. There's always a lot of energy on stage, right, after the session's done. So much conversation happening. And I think after such great conversation, we need the peace of mind. So on the other side, we have something very interesting for all of you.
Thanks.